Thank you so much for being here, two of you. I'm really excited. Like, I'm like, it's a first and it's amazing. And I would love to actually kick off by talking about your co-founder relationship. I want to know how you two met. Tell me that story.
I think before I say anything, I have to make an announcement that our third co-founder is sat over there.
Oh, hi! Oh no, did we not have enough chairs?
No, it's fine. Abrar joined the team about a year and a half ago and has been an absolute blessing for us. And we've just built a really great friendship between the three of us. But I can give you a bit of backstory to where me and Hugo met, which was, a decade ago. So a bit of a longer journey, but it actually started in a bar. A cocktail bar. And Hugo, Hugo was in a band, or his band, and was playing music actually. And I was watching as a fellow musician. And after the event, went up to Hugo and said, "You guys were great, but you really need another guitarist." And he goes to me, "Well, we do need another guitarist. Do you know any guitarists?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm a guitarist," and forced myself into the band. And then we spent sort of the majority of our friendship has been playing music together, to be honest, which was great. And also, I think I always say that it was the first experience of having to test each other's boundaries and know which buttons we can press and which ones we definitely shouldn't press. And that's a perfect thing to do before you get into a co-founding relationship with someone, because those buttons are going to be very, very obvious all the time. Yeah. And you need to know when to back off. And we built that quite well. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but...
I was actually looking for another guitarist. And I remember doing that gig and being like, I just need it. Like, I had my band before that where we had two guitarists. I was like, I really need someone. So when he came up, I was just like, "Who are you? How did you read my mind?" And it's perfect. So yeah, telepathic connection from the beginning.
I wasn't expecting that answer. That's thrown me a little bit. Can I ask Hugo, what do you play?
So I play guitar and I sing as well.
So you were the two guitarists together.
Yeah. So I was like, one guitar, can only do so much. Another one in the mix. So
beautiful.
And just came along, walked straight into my life.
Amazing. Do you play an instrument? No. Okay. Well, there's still time. There's still time to
make a band.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, we all need multiple revenue streams, right? So
there's no revenue in that market. So we can tell you that.
Well, okay. Well, we'll come back to that one.
I mean, there's when it came to Canopey though, it wasn't like just two friends starting a company. I'm a second-time founder, and I started my first company when I left Greenpeace after working there for half a decade, and had moved my sort of way up through their ranks into their festivals and events team, and sort of deeply understood the barriers that people felt to adopt sustainable lifestyle. And that usually falls into three things. It's time, knowledge, and money. Those are the three things which come up again and again as barriers for ethical consumerism. So when I set up my first company, which was dealing with the end of this supply chain, dealing with consumer product waste at the end of festivals and events, Hugo naturally got involved because as friends and I needed people to come and help me clean up consumer crap in festivals. So naturally you drag all your friends into that. But also that was our first experience of working together and really understanding that dynamic as much as playing in a band and as much as being mates. So when the idea for Canopey came, Hugo has an extensive background in digital marketing expertise and behavior change and brand design. I'd already worked with him. We were already friends. I knew that I wanted to go on this big mission to make sustainable shopping mainstream shopping, but fundamentally, no one person ever has the skills to do everything in a company. Yeah. And equally, that's why Abrar joined us as well, in that we can go so far with our skills, but we needed more, and Abrar was the perfect addition to that. So asking Hugo to found the company with me wasn't a purely, I want my mates. It was like, what are the complementary skills that we have together, and are they going to be the best things for the company to take it forward? So it was a strategic decision as well for both of us, I think. Otherwise you wouldn't have said yes.
I really love that. And I think there's such a good learning there for all of us, especially those of us that are maybe starting out on the entrepreneur journey solo. You've just described there so beautifully how you can look at your skill set, you can look at the mission that you want to achieve and say, actually, who else can I bring in to help me deliver that? Like what, I can only go so far. Where is that? And if you also have friends that can do that thing, then you maybe avoid some of the challenges that come later on.
Absolutely. And I think, having an understanding of each other emotionally before that really helps. But also, like, there's a huge thing that we all experience as founders, which is like the unwillingness to drop the ego. We all want to talk about how amazing we are, and we should talk about how amazing we are as founders, but that can also lead you to thinking you can do everything on your own, and you can micromanage everything, and you can have like your hands on every single decision that's ever going to happen. And it's just extremely unhealthy for you as an individual. Obviously, as a solo founder, you do naturally end up doing quite a lot of that stuff, but you then hire people who bring those expertise into the company so that you don't always have to be the person trying to come up with those ideas, because you physically and literally can't. But also from the flip side of that, which is that then it creates, if you do have co-founders, it creates this extremely healthy relationship. And this is something that we always return to as co-founders. We go through, as with everyone, ebbs and flows of being extremely healthy and working really well together, and then also probably being quite toxic to each other sometimes. And I think that it's the ability to be able to go, well, hold up, like, I'm not feeling good and they're not feeling good, and then talking about that. And that's something that we're really trying to build in more as a company. And I think that most people should be encouraged to do that. Like, whether you're a solo founder or not, it's talking about that relationship, the dropping the ego, accepting that you're not a superhuman, even though I would always encourage founders to think of themselves as so. But my point is still there, that you don't need to do everything, and others can help you do that.
And actually, I was going to say that being friends already meant that you can just be straight up with each other. You're not afraid to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? That is we shouldn't do that, or whatever it is. And sometimes it takes a while to get to that point with someone who's completely new to you. So that ability to just be honest with each other and like not have to worry about like offending each other. Like, it's kind of like, you know each other well enough to know that it's well intentioned.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm curious about, as you kind of expand your founding team, as you kind of expand the team further, have you thought of any ways in which you kind of recreate that sense with other people that you kind of bring into the fold? And I'm asking from both a personal interest point of view, because my co-founder is one of my best friends, and we've just started hiring and bringing people in. And I know that there is a relationship that me and Alicia has, that, sometimes we communicate just by looking at each other, or like we can say things that are maybe more harsh to each other than we might say to others. So I'd love to hear if there's any tricks or tips about going through that process.
Yeah, I mean, we've just hired, and so we're on this journey right now. But before we started that, we're always very clear with each other, like, we won't expect the same things on our employees as we do from each other. And for each other, it's a self-moderation. For employees, it's like, you have to moderate that and go, you need to leave and go home tonight because you're here too late, whatever. Yeah. So like, from a really basic perspective, it's like putting in those boundaries for employees and going, you don't have as much skin in the game as we do. Like, you shouldn't have to meet the same standards. So I think just from a basic perspective, we spend a lot of time on our own internal culture and policies and things that we felt were important to the integrity of Canopey long term, not just as a company, but like as a brand and as like a place to work and a desirable, exciting thing that people want to come and work for us. We did quite a lot of work actually, and some of that was tied with work with you guys actually as well, through an accelerator we're on. Thomas probably talk a bit more about this as the CEO as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just echo everything Hugo said. It's sort of like how you relay the difference of relationship between you as a founder or founding team. Careful. Is that spilt dash drinks over there? And obviously then the people that work with you and around you, and that it's the expectation that, as Hugo says, they definitely shouldn't be working all hours all the time. In sort of conflicting to that, though, I think it's really nice when they want to. I really like that drive. Like, so Vivi, who we've just hired, like absolutely would work like nonstop if she like if we didn't stop her to stop her doing it. And that's a really good trait, I think, in a first-time employee or just like people coming in early in a startup. But equally, it's the responsibility of us to make sure that that doesn't happen, because otherwise you've got an imbalance of work versus power and all of the rest of the things. The other thing that I was just going to add, though, from a more organic perspective, is just like building in super early the communication of like, you're allowed to bring your opinion to the table, and like we will listen to it always, and in many cases do what we can to implement that opinion, so long as it's appropriate. And I think that when we were hiring for Vivi, and we've also just brought on a dev as well, but we were quite open about that through the interview process. Like, we want to hear your, like, everything we asked was always like, talk to us, like, we're in here asking you questions, but like, what do you think? Like, we want your opinions to come, and Vivi feeds that back regularly to me and to the rest of the team, that she loves the fact that she's heard. And I think that is one of the most important things. Like, skills and everything aside, like, they've got drive and they feel like they're heard and they can talk to you. That's probably the most important things when hiring and building a culture generally.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so scary as founders sometimes to invite that challenge. But I've had the same experience where with the hires that we've made, some of the best ideas that have come out of this year has been from the two hires and not me and Alicia. And don't get me wrong, like, my ego's like, sorry, what? But that's the thing, like, invite people in to help you deliver and exceed your mission.
Well, and also as founders, you're so close to it all the time. And like, particularly when it comes to product or the relationships or the processes that you've looked at them a million times and you miss stuff and you lose the creativity sometimes within those things. And, it's been really great. Like, when Abrar first joined us as a co-founder and team member, we basically were looking at the entire vendor onboarding process and how we can streamline that, because one of the biggest bottlenecks for us previously, and still something that we're working out, is we are the only marketplace which verifies green claims before they sell on the platform. So you won't find any green claim which doesn't have evidence behind it, which is like solely unique to us. But that causes a barrier for vendors because they want to quickly onboard, but they need to go through that verification process. And we were working through all of that, and we got to a point where we were all like, yes, this is the platform this is great, this streamlines it. And then Vivi's been adding all of our previous vendors into this platform, and it's been like, this is really clunky, like, I don't like this, like, you guys like have looked at this too much. And it's helpful because then you're like, how the heck did I miss that? Like, why is there this spelling mistake? Why is this button not like randomly here? Like, it's not down to Abrar or Hugo or me, it's just back to the fact that we have been so close all the time. So new team members are extremely valuable just in the fact that they bring a fresh pair of eyes, to be honest. Like, that's been something we've definitely seen over the last few weeks of having her with us.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that, like, on that point as well, I know that both of you have been really great with regards to going on accelerators and expanding, or like getting more input and ideas and inspiration. Like, has that been something that you always intended to do? I mean, that's how we first met. So I've noticed that you've done more of them, and I just think that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so we've been on 3 accelerators, one with Virgin Startup and Crowdcube, one with Unrest, where we also did some work with Virgin as well, actually. And then we're now on Techstars, which is incredible for us, and we're really extremely validated by that. But the reason for doing these is, one, that they all have very specific things that we're looking for at a specific time. Accelerators aren't always valuable to people, and you shouldn't just go on it for the sake of it being an accelerator. We went on Virgin because the Virgin one, because it was specifically about raising money and doing a crowdfunder, which is something we were about to do. We went on Unrest because we were about to go to market, and it was all to do with branding, marketing, creativity, culture. So we needed that. And then Techstars is all about scaling, growth, quick implementation, execution, and having a network, which is just unheard of. Like, so they all have very specific things. But in answer to your question, all of those fundamentally come back to the point that as startup founders, we so often don't want to talk about the idea in case someone steals it. And actually, the best thing you can do is talk to as many people as possible. Very, very rarely is someone going to steal it. It's much, much more time efficient for them to just give you a bit of advice and help you and push you along the way. And if they did steal it and succeeded, you as a founder should be focused on the problem. You as a founder should be absolutely obsessed with that problem. So if someone solves that problem, yeah, it's frustrating, but bloody hell, you should be happy. Like, thank God, the problem that I've been losing sleep over and I've been thinking about, and my solution has been struggling to hit product mark, blah, 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 blah. Like, suddenly someone's done it. Great news. Like, move on to the next problem. Like, that's what a true founder should do. And I think that we often, and us as well, get too stuck in the like, no, we know. Like, we know best, and therefore we will continue to drive that forward without anyone else. And that's why we open ourselves up to criticism. We open ourselves up to sort of learning and growing and getting advice, but also just going out there and talking to real people about what we do.
Yeah, I was just going to add, as like I'm the chief marketing officer, so like I do a lot of like really think about the customer first. And it's the same thing of like a lot of people just don't really want to talk to the end user. They're kind of afraid of that. And it's like, it's so valuable whenever you do it and you just come out with these just really fucking wacky things as well that people do. It's just like so fascinating the way people work. Like I, have some people, like, we're a shopping platform basically at our heart. And it's like some people like expect the categories to be like them walking around a supermarket. And it's just like, I don't think about it like that. I don't think in that way, but some people do. But like that thing about like asking, like just that practicing intelligent naivety, which is like, really important. Like, it's good to have conviction in your solution and what you're doing. And know, like, this one person might say this, but actually I know that this is backed up by like real evidence and real, like, we're responding to a problem that we know better than them sometimes. But it's also really good to practice that and listen to people. And it's the same thing with accelerators, is like, it's a whole learning process. And it has been, sometimes it's hard because you're like, oh, we just did all this. And it's like, okay, I'm going back to square one. Yeah. But it's always that, like, sometimes you just have to trust in the process. And that's quite good to do.
Yeah.
Just finally on that note of having to do things again, just anecdotally, for the Unrest Accelerator, we were forced to do that's too harsh. We were asked to do a 3-minute pitch at the end on the demo day, and like 3 minutes. The shortest I'd done before that was 5, but most angel groups are asking me to do like 7.5 to 10 minutes. Like, and I was like, 3 minutes? How on earth can I fit everything we're doing into a 3-minute pitch? And it was brilliant. Like, really made you just refine the exact points that you needed to get across to get into that next meeting. But now we're on Techstars, they're asking us to do it again. And originally I was like, no fucking way, I'm not doing this, or I've just done this. I'm not going to spend week on week going over my 3-minute pitch because I've just done this. And literally the first session that we had on it today, we're at a completely different stage of company. So I did this initial 3-minute pitch, and then as I was going through it, I was like, this isn't really that like appropriate for where we are now. Like, even just like 6 months ago, right? Like, it was better then. So it's really interesting. Like, you go over the same things, but you're, particularly as a startup, you grow so quickly, you change so rapidly, that again, if you're not open to listening to people telling you need to redo this, you need to like learn again, you need to accept that what you thought you knew is now no longer relevant, like that, you're not going to grow. So it's really, really been valuable to remove those walls. And even this, I say this because this was today, I came out and I go to you guys, I just want to like just mug it off. Can I just say I'm ill? I don't want to do this 3-minute pitch. And I came out of it and I was like, shit, like I need to go back and practice my 3-minute pitch. And so it's super interesting, but really helpful.
I honestly love that so much because we have been through the same process. Like this time last year, we were refining our messaging, we were refining our positioning. We launched a refined website in January. And it's a year later and we're doing exactly the same thing again. And it's not like we're throwing everything out and starting again, but it's like we've learned more clients, more projects, more events. Like, the market is different to a year ago. Like, so we need to keep evolving. And actually it's quite exciting to know that you don't, like, that's always happening. Like, you don't have to, I'd be more worried, I guess, now if that wasn't happening and I was staying stagnant. And so, yeah.
Well, even the biggest companies in the world are always innovating. And if you as a startup are going, I never need to innovate because my solution is perfect and I know everything, you are wrong. Like, your product is going to change or develop. I don't often like it when people say it's going to change, actually, because it evolves. Yeah, it develops, it grows, and that's absolutely fine. It's all coming from feedback, or it should be coming from feedback from your end user, as Hugo says. So I think, like, fundamentally what that just comes down to is accepting that it's going to be a consistent journey, and like you shouldn't ever like close that door on advice and feedback. It's never always going to be relevant. Like, not, you know, you're going to get a million pieces of advice from lots of different people as a founder, and some of it you can just mug off. But a lot of it is really valuable, and the sign when you start seeing something repetitively come up from different people, that's when you really know you need to be listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Canopey. So officially launched last month, September.
Yeah, technically, yeah. So it's 28th. So
let's give that a round of applause. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, we love that. Official. Yeah, I know it probably feels like you've been working on it. Well, you have been working on it for a really long time. So you're like, oh.
It's just so like we had a beta launch like in June, and it was like a sort of semi-finished version of the product. Like, you could pretty much get everything that we wanted on there, but there were still things we needed to iterate on and learn from. And the whole point of that period was that we were giving it to the community that we'd built, and we'd saying, go and tell us what's shit, and then we'll learn from it and execute really quickly. And bless Abra, he like rebuilt the entire front end within a very quick turnaround, which has been incredibly impressive. But every time we rebuild, like, as you know, it's about like bringing in things from that feedback, and that's why we did that. And then we did this public launch, and we got loads of press, which was great. We're in the Grocer, we're in lots of different things. We spoke to the BBC, like really fun. But it was sort of like, oh, like we've just done a launch 3 months ago, and now we're like doing this public launch, but there's still things we know that we need to fix. And it's like, you kind of forget to like accept that, like, yeah, this is a moment, like this is a milestone. So it's nice when we get reminded that, like, yeah, you've launched. It's like, yeah, we've launched.
Oh my God, if we need to like have a little celebration, like, where's the party poppers? We'll get them out. Yeah, exactly. So for anyone that is new to Canopey, can you give us maybe your 1 minute pitch or 30 seconds? I don't know. How short have you gone? No, give us your, as long as you like, your description.
Okay. So, no, so it's fundamentally, it's really hard to be a sustainable consumer. The ethical consumer market is super fragmented. If you want to verify claims, track your impact, learn about swaps, even buy a product, got to go to different platforms, different user journeys, and none of them make it easy to go from one to the next. Essentially, we fundamentally need to reduce the impact of the consumer industry and every industry from a climate perspective. But it's currently as you mentioned right at the beginning, actually, nearly 50% of the population find it so complicated they don't even bother trying. Canopey is the home for buying better. So we are the first and only platform which completely streamlines that ethical consumer journey. So what I mean by that is bringing thousands of truly verified sustainable products with evidence behind every claim into one marketplace platform where there's education and shopping built into it for convenience and accessibility, and powerful impact stats showing the carbon emissions, water waste, and plastic waste that you save on each purchase compared to the mainstream alternative, on one platform with one user journey and one mission.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I feel like I want to get everyone to clap again. I love
you don't need to clap every time.
No, we do. But we'll move on. One of the things that I really want to dig into, love it all, love, love, love. One of the things I particularly enjoyed reading and understanding and getting into, and we spoke about it briefly, Hugo, before we started, was your focus on building trust, rebuilding trust in a way. I feel like, greenwashing has kind of made us a little bit jaded maybe when it comes to, buying more sustainably. I'd love to hear more about that, and particularly around that process of accreditation. Like, what does that look like, and how have you kind of built that out in order to build that trust?
Yeah, so we actually did some research. We commissioned some research. So 2,000 UK adults, representative samples. There's all like, sort of representative of the UK. And we found that more than 2/3 of people, so I think 68% of people are actually angry about greenwashing. They're just like pissed off that brands are like just lying to them. So greenwashing, if any of you don't know, is when a brand sort of says that they're greener than they are, or they make claims that aren't actually true about their products. So, you see this with fashion brands going, oh, the eco edit, and it's like 20% recycled polyester or something, and it's like, well, that's not really enough, is it? So it's kind of vague, unspecific, or even untrue claims. So we know that people are getting really pissed off about this, and fair play, because it's really hard as a consumer. It's already hard to understand a lot of these things. It's quite complex, like sustainability and climate change is really complex. And you shouldn't have to be a climate scientist or an eco warrior or a caveman living in a bloody forest. I don't know, someone living in a forest wearing a loincloth. Like you shouldn't have to be this perfect person that knows everything about it. So that was really where it all began, and the impetus for this was just to like, that's bullshit, and so we need actual trust, and we need to bring that back. So we were like, well, look, we're starting from scratch, we're a startup. Let's do this right from the beginning. So we built that into the very foundations of what Canopey is. We have things in our articles of association as a company to sort of hold us to account to standards around sustainability and trust. So that vetting process is really rigorous. We ask for evidence. So, if you're saying that your product is vegan, we need to see evidence of, and we have very strict criteria for what that evidence can be. And we consulted with lots of different people, lots of different experts around these things and what the criteria is. You can see that criteria on the website, so you can judge yourself as a customer. I think that is like ties into one of the core things about this, in that it's just transparency just needs to be part and parcel of that process. And greenwashing and like proper trust and sustainability, it needs to be backed up with transparency. It needs to be like easier as a consumer. Okay, it might not meet someone's standards. I think our standards are pretty high, to be honest. Like if it says recyclable, it's 100% recyclable. It can't be anything less than that, stuff like that. So I think our standards are quite high, but you can at least see what those standards are as well. And if you go on any other marketplace that sort of says that they're ethical, they'll say stuff like, this brand says that their products are vegan, or they claim that their products are vegan. Yeah. And we know that from vendors that have onboarded with us, who sell with those platforms, that they don't actually ask for evidence for these things. So it's a huge problem, and it's something that we need to do better. And we need to do better from a legal standpoint as well, because regulation is changing. The Green Claims Code, which is published by the Competition and Markets Authority in the UK, was published last year, or maybe it was the year before in January 2021. And that governs how businesses can communicate these things. And then the EU Claims Directive, literally, I think last month, was published, doing a similar thing and sort of really cracking down on how we talk about these things. So for us, it was like, well, it's not just about like our consumer and like fighting for them and like fighting on their behalf. It's about like future-proofing us, and it's like holding yourself to a standard. So that was really important for us, and something we built in from the very start of the company.
That's awesome. And I guess like something that just came into my head there, and I don't know if this is maybe showing more of the type of person that I am, but is there like, because we are where we are with greenwashing, right? And there's a lot of people that are naturally frustrated, jaded, maybe a bit like checked out from the narrative. Is there a frustration with that, in that you're genuinely doing this incredible work? You're, as you said, very rigorous, very strict. You're kind of standing out from that pack, but in a way, like, because other marketplaces or like that claim to do that are not doing the checks. And does that kind of, I don't know, like, what is there a bit of frustration there? Yeah, I feel frustrated.
Yeah, I think
on your behalf.
I think there's two things. There's frustration. Like for us, I think the main thing is just frustration for the consumer, like on behalf of the consumer, because it's like, it's fucking hard, like and so we need to do better, like as an industry, and that goes for brands as well. Like brands do make claims that aren't always true, or aren't like, there is a really hard thing there, because there's lots of really well-meaning brands, and there are brands that are vegan, but they just can't get a certification for it. And for us, we're like we get that, but we do need to see that. At this point, that's kind of where we decided to draw the line. But we're always changing as well. Like we're always going to be reviewing this and looking for better ways. That we started actually with biodegradable as like a accreditation, and then we kind of realized, what does that mean? Like we started looking to it, And so out, it's actually really specific. It's really not very fun from a marketing perspective, but it's now industrially compostable and home compostable. And we decided that based on like the end of life. It's like, as a consumer, what do I do with this? Like, do I put it in the bin? Do I put it in recycling? Those things are quite standard, recyclable, etc. But composting and all that stuff is a bit murky. And if I put this in my garden, will it actually break down? Because there's a lot of issues around that. So we follow like international standards around those things. And then, so that's the first thing that we get pissed off about. And that's where like a lot of our campaigning aspect as a company comes from. So like, we'll go and stand out in front of like H&M and like call them out because they're just absolute bullshit sometimes. For instance, their recycling bins in their stores where you can donate your clothes. You know, you'd be very surprised where some of those clothes end up, in not good places, not being recycled. And so that's where a lot of those campaigning comes from. The other side of it is just a personal thing and an annoying thing about the industry, and that is that a lot of people don't realize that these other platforms aren't doing that work. You know, it might say this brand claims this. It doesn't really say that we haven't checked this when we know that. So I think that's frustrating for us, because it's like, if people knew that, I think they probably feel more strongly about it as well. But again, they're not really being told the truth there. So
yeah. Thank you for obliging you're going to add to it? Yes.
Well, just on the sense that it is frustrating, but also there's a smug truth in that, as Hugo says, regulation is coming in. So as that regulation becomes more rigorous and companies start getting penalized for it, they will have to change or stop making those claims. And then, well, that benefits Canopey and the brands that sell on Canopey really well, because, you know, they've gone through that. I also am always, you know, it's so easy to criticize competitors or well, some, you know, semi-competitors, but I think that, look, the ethical consumer market has grown 1,000% over the last 20 years. There's a £121 billion sector in the UK alone, with a £10 billion market just for sustainable consumer packaged goods in the UK alone. And I think that has been really catalyzed by these players, by these people who have been building these marketplaces and these platforms and these products, and really, really kudos to them, because that's how this market even exists. So I think there's a lot of gratitude from us, but also particularly from my end, because I've worked in this sector my whole career, and I've worked with organizations which do go and pressure and like present transitionary roadmaps to companies to be able to become greener. So when I worked at Greenpeace, for me, it's like, great job, but now pass the baton on to companies which can do that properly now, because we've built the market, we've built the sector, you've done a great job at doing that. So either change and like, you know, buck up and start doing the real work, or stop doing it and lying. And I always just like go back to the point of, if you are someone who really, really cares about cruelty-free products, and you've bought a product which is, this brand claims that it's cruelty-free, or this brand has said that it's cruelty-free. Well, cruelty-free isn't just the ingredients that are in a product. Cruelty-free is also how those materials and those ingredients are sourced, and whether that has destroyed habitat. And that's why the certification exists, so that you can get audited on these things. And if you don't have it, that means that you haven't checked those things. And if you have checked those things, great, let's see the audits. But so I think, like, sometimes I just go back to the root cause of, if you really care about these things, and then you found out 5 years later or however long, next day, it doesn't matter, that wasn't true. Like, that's a pretty heartbreaking thing from an individual perspective, particularly if you really care. So, you know, I think from our end, as Hugo says, it just goes back to, like, yes, fundamentally, it's about giving trust to the consumer. I
really love how you've kind of reframed that kind of competitive lens as well, because I think that, you know, of course there's going to be like frustration on one hand, but acknowledging what has paved the way is also valuable as well, and you don't want it to become so much that it's a distraction. So something that I also wanted to talk to you both about, when I was reading a lot about your ethos as a company, and things like that, one of the things that I wrote down here, which I really loved, was being better, not best. And it really spoke to me, because I've been on such ups and downs on that thing where you're like trying for perfection, but not getting something out there because of that. And so that, as I said, really resonated. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about this and how it kind of came to be and what it means in practice for you. Because I think it's so, like, for those other founders in the room, I think it's such an important mantra or thing to remember?
Absolutely. It's sort of like the entire tagline of Canopey is always better, not best. The home of buying better, not the home of buying perfect, not the home of buying eco-friendly warrior. It's better. And I think that like the reason for this is sort of twofold. One is that we as individuals have so much other stuff going on in our lives that climate can't always be the priority for us. You know, there's a cost of living crisis at the moment. There's war. There's people who are close to us who are like suffering, and therefore we have to turn our focus to supporting them. And the climate is this huge intangible thing which most people will never understand fully unless you go and study it properly. So it's quite hard to ask people to consistently focus on that. Like focus on this thing which you've never seen, you can't touch, you don't feel yet in the UK really. Now really care and make that your one purchase priority. Like, come on, let's be real. The other side of it though is that, you know, fundamentally it comes down to the fact that can they afford to make those purchases en masse? And actually ethical products are more expensive for a reason. Like they are better made, they're better materials. There's usually labor rights within that, which are completely disregarded by non-ethical products. So therefore these things rack up costs. And then it means that there is the need for it to sell for a higher price point. But that doesn't help people who grew up in disadvantaged homes or don't have jobs. And so actually the whole rhetoric for us is not about having to make all of those purchases right now. It's not about having to be the perfect consumer. It's about making small swaps where you can, when you can, and what fits with your lifestyle. And that's all about being better, not best. And I think that really what that means is that it's the change of conversation in the climate movement from judging the individual to just making it more convenient for the individual first and foremost, but also just the whole point of like, if 1 million or 1 billion people make one small change once a year, like that has a huge exponential impact on the industry that we're whatever we're talking about. So for us, the mantra had to be built into the foundations of what we do. Yes, from a sort of like brand perspective, but also just from the fundamental understanding from our careers of how people live, like, and what the barriers are. Like my entire time at Greenpeace was speaking to real people about why they couldn't support Greenpeace or support climate movements. So there's a deep understanding of those barriers, and also we've come from backgrounds where we haven't had money. You know, I help my parents pay rent sometimes still. And like, you know, it's these sorts of things where it's like, you then deeply understand what it means to not be able to be an ethical consumer all the time, but really give a shit about being an ethical consumer all the time. So therefore you then bring that into your company and try to build in the things which are most relatable to the majority of the public, which is being better, not best.
And has that filtered into how you work together, how you kind of build the platform and things like that? Like, is it an internal practice as well as an external one? Yeah,
look, you know, we could go down the route of like, to solve the climate crisis, we need radical economic change, right? Like realistically, like I have studied an MSc in climate science. I work with climate scientists at the Tyndall Centre for Climate Research and the Grantham Institute for Climate Research. And the situation is much worse than I can bet anyone understands watching in the room, in the street. And therefore the argument could be from me that starting something like Canopey goes completely against that because we're encouraging people to buy products. But also there's the conflict for me and for us as people who are learned in this area of, yes, but not very realistic to ask for radical economic shift in the time frame that we need to do it. So how the hell do we solve the climate crisis? Well, actually, it means businesses need to make it easier for people to at least get on that journey, to at least start that journey. And for us, we're talking about changing the consumer industry and radically changing that over time. But if we ask people to go from A to Z straight away, most people are going to say no. And that's why there's a huge intent to action gap. You know, most people, in fact, I could just ask you how many people in this room shop sustainably and try to consider shopping sustainably on a daily basis. You know, I think that not many of you are raising your hands because you don't take the action to do it, right? But how many of you care about the climate? You can raise your hands. Otherwise, I'm in the wrong room. What is this, like a Conservative Tory party conference or something? So,
I hope not. No one's told me that.
But my point is you all raised your hands after a bit of encouragement. But the point is that there's an intent to action gap, right? Yeah. Yeah. How much did you pay them? And so, yeah, just going back to the point is that, you know, we can't ask people to radically change their lifestyles overnight. It's not realistic. Most people aren't going to do it. There will be a niche group of people who will. Good for them, but most of the population can't. So therefore, yes, internally as a company, we have this debate consistently about what are the sacrifices that we make in the climate action movement versus what is the most realistic for the consumer. So again, that comes down to the fact that if you can shop for what you want, when you want, how you want, but just type in a different URL and come to Canopey, then actually what we're doing is quantifiably showing a reduction in impact, because that's what we measure. But also from a fundamental point, all of those people were suddenly in that journey. And then if we decided to implement circular shopping model within the marketplace, and we did that in a way which was adoptable by all of our users, think how quickly we could change the consumer market then. If we asked them to adopt that circular model right today, most people aren't going to do it. So it's like that. It's an admission of delay, but one that has to be done if you're going to adopt sort of climate solutions into society on a mass level.
Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a
no, love that. Here for it. We're going to open to questions from the room. I appreciate that I've been hogging the mic, but I have one more question. Quick fire question.
Well, you just said it was go to the room. But...
Well, I said I said I'm going to go to the room, but just before that, I always say that. Like I always say, before I go out to the room, I'm going to ask one more question. So it's giving everyone a chance to think of their question. You know, I'm being generous.
All right. We'll take it. It's empathetic of you.
I'm being really generous. So my final question, quick fire, is you pressure. So you obviously get to work with and interact with lots of really amazing brands. And we would love to hear if you could share one brand each with us that you really want to shout out. Can you do that? Tell us who they are, what they do.
So I saw this question when you sent it over to me. And I was like, I love all of, like, disclaimer, all brands on Canopey are equally welcome and we love you all and we'll promote you all. Yeah, like,
can I just say, I wasn't actually going to ask this question, but Hugo mentioned that he'd been thinking about it a lot beforehand. And I was like, scribble it down. I'll ask it now. I'm
going to cheat and talk about a brand that's not on Canopey.
Okay, like lead generation, love that.
Well, not even that, but I advise climate tech startups at Imperial College London. So I also see lots of great innovative companies coming out of these great accelerators and great universities, which aren't always related to the sector I am, but sometimes are. And one of the great companies that I get to mentor and advise at the moment is called Pulpatronics, and they have innovated on RFID tags. Do most people know what RFID tags are? No? Okay, there was one person who said no, so I can explain what it is. An RFID tag is basically the tag that you see on most consumer products, so predominantly clothing and fashion, which cause a sensor to go off and cause an alarm, or track the number of SKUs in the shop, or they'll be scanned at the barcode. Like, these are the tags that are used generally in the industry. But they include paper, precious metal chips, electronics, and they're incredible. They can't be composted, they can't be recycled, because you would have to take apart all of those materials which are held together with glue, so impossible. And also the carbon emissions to create a product like that are ridiculously high because of the processing and the materials, etc. Come to Pulpatronics, and they've innovated. I sound like I'm pitching a different company now, but they've innovated an RFID tag which is 100% compostable, uses laser tagging, and reduces the carbon emissions, but also reduces the price for retailers to use. So I'm incredibly proud of what they've done. They've just won a Red Dot Design Award in New York, which is incredible. So that's my company, and I've now passed the buck on to Hugo, who can talk about consumer brands.
I love your comment about lead gen. Like,
hey,
so
I'm a businesswoman.
If that's the case, then I should shout out Patagonia, shouldn't I? Try and get them on the fucking platform. There's so many brands, like, they've all got sort of the great thing about, like, what we do is, this is like a good thing and a bad thing, because, like, a lot of people be like, oh, this, you know, why don't you just be a platform for clothing? It's like, oh, that's so boring. Just like, just one, you know, like, and it's like, one of the things we wanted to do was make it easier that you don't have to go to like 10 different websites and to buy sustainable stuff. So we've got loads of different products, loads of different accreditations we give. So it's really hard. But one of them I love is Cree Skincare. They're like a B Corp skincare brand. I wouldn't really wear, it's like very like skincare routine, which I do not have. I'm getting better. I'm wearing sunscreen, which I hear is the best way.
Yes.
And I love it because it's literally one thing as well, which is fantastic. But yeah, Cree Skincare, and they are glass bottles and things like that. And they're awesome. They're like B Corp. We had a session with B Corp recently, and they were just like, they were besotted with Cree Skincare, and we're like, oh, they're going through vetting right now. And they're just lovely people as well. So I think that's one of the nice things about a lot of the brands that we work with. They're all just like lovely people. And again, what Thomas was saying earlier about like the benefits of sustainable products, like they tend to be made with care. Like they look at like every part of the supply chain, and they're like delving into this stuff to make it better in every possible way. So there's something lovely about that, and it's a real privilege to work with brands like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Fact 50.
30 to 50. Yeah.
Oh,
Probably
wow.
don't need 50 at this point.
Yes, you do. 50 all year round.
All right.
My girlfriend, sorry, I'm snatching, but my girlfriend is like very adamant that I need a skincare routine. So
we all need a skincare routine.
But to give context to this, she's blessed with Asian genes, and she has amazing skin, and she looks just perpetually young. And I look like an old man with the stress that I'm going through at Canopey. And she turns to me the other day and she was like, I don't want to be seen as a trophy wife next to you. So can you please have a skincare routine?
Get that factor 50 on then. Come on.
Yeah, like I need to start, like, because otherwise she's not going to be happy.
I love that. Awesome. Okay, we will open to questions now. So who would like to kick us off? That was quite an abrupt switch to questions, wasn't it? Sorry about that. I don't know why I did it like that. Hello.
Hi, Graham.
Ooh.
That's how they did the research, actually. Yeah, so there was a investigative sort of research done on their take back scheme, and over 75% of that clothing was ending up in landfill, incinerators, shredded, sent to Africa, just dumped. So yeah, really shocking, but yeah, great idea. And yeah, definitely something which should be done more, actually, I think.
Yeah, and then the other question is, it's not really around the platform, I think, but Bill Gates was being interviewed. They questioned him on the private jet use, and he just said, "Well, he kind of got a bit flustered. Well, I pay to offset that."
Yeah.
So super rich people with private jets going, "Well, I can use my private jet because I just pay money to offset that." Is that a good enough excuse, or is that
no? But to give context, so offsets are obviously naturally an important part of the journey. Like nothing is going to be, well, not nothing. There are some great, amazing products which are coming out and materials which are coming out, which are regenerative and carbon negative and all these things. But on the whole, there's always going to be an impact. So absolutely. But I think that the excuse of, oh, well, I just offset it is a dog shit excuse. Like you should reduce your impact as much as possible before you even consider using offsets and consider having to need to use them. Fundamentally, you should get to the point where it is almost physically impossible to reduce your impact even more before you, well, obviously you should be offsetting through that journey, but then that's the point where you start using them.
We actually have a blog piece about this and how we approached it, because we wanted to just be transparent about it. And so it kind of gets into the detail of all those things. And yeah, I think that whole sector and that whole world is changing rapidly as more people sort of are really interested in this, and companies are like doing it more. And so it's great to see like higher accountability for all of those things. But yeah, I totally agree. It's just that is not an excuse.
Yeah. I think also that a lot of offsets tend to, there's been a lot of exposure about offsets not being like legitimate over the last few years, and that's not a reason to just like completely scrap the industry, because these things improve. Like we tend to, when things happen in the climate industry which aren't completely truthful, to go, scrap it all. Well, actually, no, like let's learn from the things which weren't working and improve it.
Evolve.
Evolve. But so I think that, just coming back to the point is what we really need to be looking is at carbon removals, not carbon offsets. Generally that leads to carbon avoidance. And I just don't think that that's very appropriate to be saying, because from a scientific perspective, he's pumping loads of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. If he's using carbon offsets, which I can guarantee are not carbon removals, they're carbon avoidance projects, that carbon's still going to be sitting in the atmosphere for the next 150 years and still going to have an impact for the next 10 generations to come. So it's not enough. Yeah.
I need to ask the mic back so I can repeat the questions for people online. Sorry. Do you have a hi?
Hi, congratulations for having actually the courage to start making it happen. So I'm into environmental sustainability from the consumer point of view a decade now. And I'm very aware of marketplaces that exist already many years. And they're doing something very similar to what you're doing in terms of the products, like different, a variety of types of products. And some of them, as far as I know, they do have a system of a criteria of choosing the brands in terms of how they impact the brands and the products impact the environment. So how do you differentiate your service, like your startup from the competitors?
So the question is about how do you differentiate from other marketplaces?
Yeah, it's great. It's really important because we mentioned obviously that there have been staple sort of legacy marketplaces in this sector which have built this industry essentially, and that's been fantastic. The challenge is that we now work with the brands that sell on their platform, so we have a very deep behind the scenes insight into actually what they get asked for. And you're right, they have a certain amount of criteria that they look for from brands, but they don't ask for evidence around that criteria. So what you'll see is like, okay, we want this brand because they're claiming that their products are vegan or cruelty-free, as an example. So they get in touch with the brand, they speak to the brand, and the brand will claim that these things are legitimate and will show an ingredients list and be like, there you go, that's the proof that we have at most. But almost always they're never asked to show anything. It's usually from a sustainability report or from the website's own claims. But if the website's own claims, I could literally start a website today and sell you a bunch of Amazon products and tell you that they're all super sustainable. And if the marketplaces are going to take that for the word and for the fact, that's not good enough. And actually it's illegal now as well under the Green Claims Code. So the very fundamental difference is that we have brands which will come to us and claim 10 things, but you'll only see 6 of those claims on the Canopey marketplace, because the 4 which they didn't have evidence for or certification for or audits for, you will never see on Canopey. Because the point is that every claim that we ever put on the Canopey marketplace has primary evidence behind it. And fundamentally, 90%, I'm going to say, of the brands that are on those marketplaces probably have evidence, but they've just never been asked. And that's a problem, because then if the Green Claims Code came down and the Competition and Markets Authority came and asked them, they've got absolutely no proof to show that. And you as a consumer shouldn't have that problem of going, is this in the 10% which doesn't have the evidence or the 90% which does? Because you'll never know, because that marketplace is never asked. Whereas for Canopey, we have asked on everything all the time. So that's the biggest fundamental difference. The other thing, though, that's really, really important for this is that we also, just from a level of like material impact, measure the impact of these products as well and compare them against mainstream products, which again is another thing which no marketplace is doing, which is we can show you the carbon emissions, the water waste and the plastic waste that you're saving as a consumer that's been embedded within the production of this product, that when you buy that product, you save, compared to the mainstream. And I think just from a fundamental level, accreditation or not, if we can show you that this product is quantifiably better, then again, that's a unique signifier for us, but also a bit more of a trust element, going back to that point about trust. for the individual as well. But I do just go back to the fact that this whole industry was built by those legacy players, right? So it's not like us sitting here and going, you're evil at all. Like, you guys are super well intended and you've done an amazing job. But the challenge is that the industry has changed, laws have changed, and consumers are not as blind as they used to be. Consumers see through the greenwash now. So we need to change that, and Canopey provides that for people.
Thank you for this. So is there like a different approach, particularly an investigation process you follow across the supply chain?
So yeah, so you asked, just for the people online, like, is there a different sort of supply chain accreditation process that we follow? Again, it fundamentally comes down to, is this company claiming something, and do they have a certification or an audit that shows that that thing is legitimate and data-led? And if they don't have those things, then they won't get that claim. But that's not something that they're asked on other marketplaces. They are taken from sustainability reports, claims on websites, conversations over a call. And I'd love to sit here and be in a world where I can just trust the word of a mission-driven brand, because most people are super well intending, and I would absolutely love to do that. But that's not the world we live in. And it definitely isn't the world from bigger players. I can tell you that from my experience of working with them, where they'll tell you something and it's just not the truth. So this is the difference. It's not so much about we're not going and doing these audits for these companies to check if it's vegan. We're not going and creating this new rigorous supply chain certification that tells you that it's cruelty-free. We are working with already established, reputable certifications and audits which prove as evidence that this brand has done those checks. And then that allows you to know that that claim has been verified. If it hasn't been, and if they haven't got that evidence, you will not see that claim on Canopey, but you would see it on the other marketplaces. Yeah, certified or audits. We have like you can see them, as Hugo says, on the website, but there's like parameters of what we accept and what we just unfortunately won't accept. All right, so no, great question though, because it's like the detail which matters, right, in this.
Do we have time for one more question? Does anyone want to ask? Hiya.
Hello.
When it comes to the consumer, like, have you created the profile of the consumer? Is it just like one type you're searching for? And are you yourselves the customers of your company? And at what percentage is it, like, how, if you're 100%, how much do you?
So this is a question all about consumers. So I think we're asking around your ideal customer profile. Are you the ideal customer profile? Tell us more about your customers.
We have a customer profile, which is the eco warrior.
What, sorry?
The eco warrior.
Oh, okay.
So it's like the kind of the person who's like, and then I literally sit next to the guy who like worked at Greenpeace for like all his career. Great question. We have like a number of different sort of customer profiles and ways we see sort of doing all that work in marketing is kind of bullshit. Like, it's like, I hate this idea that there's like this set person, like, oh, this 22-year-old woman called Martha who, goes to the bakery every morning. It's like such a silly thing, because, with sustainability is actually it's across all age ranges. And we hear this a lot. We actually did we did an event yesterday with the Design Council, and there's a workshop around kind of like sustainability and what do consumers want about sustainability and what do your customers want. And someone on the call was like, oh, older people just don't care about the environment because it's not going to affect them. And it's like not true at all. There's a lot of older people who do lots of things. They compost, they recycle in much higher numbers, they garden, they do all these other things, and they repair and mend their clothes. All these things are really important actually for climate change movement and sustainability and those kind of ways of living. They often also spend more because they have the money or they have the security, and maybe they care less about having Nike shoes, So like, there's a lot of different ways that you can see a consumer, and I think it's a trap to fall into to just go, oh, our consumers are 24 to 30 or whatever. But generally we do see a lot of interest from young age range. around our age range, 18 to 30 basically, and to 34 really. But again, that talking about that intent to action gap, we see that a lot with those younger people. They have they're more brand conscious, they're more, which can go both ways. That can be really good because they really care about the brands that they're wearing, and that can be a good thing. But they often are drawn in by Nike or H&M or whoever it is. But yeah, I think there's such a wide swathe of people who care about it in different ways. So it's quite hard really to narrow that down. But yeah, we do have sort of profiles within that. Absolutely. And yeah, we started this company because we wanted this to be a reality. We didn't know any of these marketplaces, and everyone we spoke to was like, oh, I don't know where you could go and buy all this stuff. We spoke to like green councillors who couldn't name like a single online shop to where they can kind of go and shop and find all these products. We spoke to vendors and businesses that make stuff out of tents or whatever. And they were like, yeah, like, where do we sell this stuff? Like, we don't have to make our own store. So yeah, we're our own customers for sure.
Yeah. Fundamentally, everything you said, yes. But also is that ideal customer profiles are so important when you've got a very specific niche vertical. But we're talking about products from cleaning to cosmetics, from food and drink to clothing. Generally, it's all mission driven or like sustainable. But again, coming back to what I was saying earlier, is like that's not always the touch point for an individual to shop on us. Like sometimes that's actually just about durability. Sometimes it's about price point, and actually that you save money over time by buying refills. And it's nothing about the sustainability. It's about the fact that they can save money in the lifetime of this product, right? So it leads us to have to navigate that quite carefully, because if we are to build a platform which encompasses, you know, that everyone goes to in the same way that everyone goes to Amazon, then you shouldn't make it super exclusive, because otherwise you do sort of like remove that and it becomes very privileged to a set group of people. Within all of that though, I think that, as Hugo says, there's a huge intent from younger, sort of more environmentally conscious people, but a bigger gap to the action that they take, usually because of money actually, but also a few other things like brand loyalty to like big brands, or like, oh, I'll just go to H&M or whatever it is. And obviously the fast fashion industry has so much influence there in the fashion space. But then, you know, you see that intent to action gap actually much smaller in older generations, but less intense. So, you know, it balances out probably. So yeah, it's a bit of a spinning a bit of plates and just like trying to work out when is the right time. And it also means that we'll have different campaigns that we do, which will be sometimes really relevant to this group of people, but the next campaign, that group of people will go, oh, I don't really understand that. But actually that's because we're targeting a whole different group of customer profiles at that point, right? So yes, but wider than probably most companies, just to sort of bring it back to some of the other founders in the room. Like, it is important to have that, but it depends on what you're targeting. Yeah.
Oh my God, I've loved this conversation so much. I've really enjoyed it. You're both great to speak to.